My name is Ali Mengu, and I am an unhappy patient with a terminal illness. My life was nearing its end, and everything seemed empty, without hope. But amidst the darkness, I found something that gave a strange meaning to my days, a game called Infinite Missions. In this virtual world, I met girls who, although fictional, offered me comfort. They were willing to stay by my side, sharing joys and adventures. I achieved all possible accomplishments, maximizing affinity with each character to the point where they wanted to devote themselves to me. But even with all of that, there was a bitter reality. It didn't matter how many victories I had in the game because in the real world, time was running out. Then something happened that defied all logic. Just when I felt my days were coming to an end, a signal appeared before me. It was a countdown that read, "When this countdown reaches 0, you will be transported to the world of infinite missions." I watched the countdown reach its end without expectations, and then everything disappeared. When I opened my eyes, I found myself in a strange room. I was alive. My body, once frail, was now full of energy. Confused, I looked around and noticed a sword beside me. When I touched it, a glowing signal appeared before my eyes. Sword attributes. I couldn't believe it. Everything I had experienced in Infinite Missions was now real. Everyone had been transported to this game. This wasn't a hallucination. This was my new reality. I looked around with a strange sense of déjà vu. This beginning was far too familiar. I had lived it countless times in my past life within the game. Without wasting time, I murmured, "Open character information." Immediately, several transparent panels appeared before me, displaying my attributes. I couldn't deny it. This was real. I was inside the world of Infinite Missions, the single-player puzzle game I had stumbled upon years earlier. This game had kept me clinging to life. Its vast world, thrilling missions, and strict progression system constantly challenged me. But more than anything, what motivated me were the conquest missions and the depth of its story. Additionally, the game had something unique. Its difficulty was extremely high. I vividly remembered the countless attempts I made to complete the game. Now, seeing new players beginning to fall like flies, I couldn't help but feel alarm. In the starter village, chaos reigned. "It's impossible!" someone shouted. "We haven't even left the village, and we've already lost so many." A group that had decided to hunt nearby returned decimated. A girl, still in shock, explained, "It wasn't a horde. It was just a chicken. A chicken covered in flames. With a single attack, it wiped out 3 people." I let out a sigh. I had learned to survive in this relentless world thanks to my previous experience in Infinite Missions. The key wasn't brute force, but mastering the game's mechanics, planning strategies, and wisely using NPCs. Even with all my knowledge, this world was dangerous. Every mission carried risks, but I wasn't willing to be eliminated. As I reflected, a familiar sound echoed in my mind. Ding! Achievement system activated. A long list. The achievements unlocked before him were the same ones he had obtained in the original game. He had apparently not only retained his achievements, but also the relationships and affinity he had built with the NPCs. With a jolt of excitement, he realized what this meant. If all this is real, then I also inherited my connection with the goddesses from all the places who were in love with me. He clenched his fists. Not only did the ordinary NPCs recognize him, but even the bosses and the most powerful entities in the game remembered him. Some of these bosses were stronger than any player at the same stage, and with their affinity, he could not only continue the relationships he had built, but also receive their valuable help. He reviewed the achievement he had obtained, and his heart leaped when he saw its origin. The Adventurers Association. This achievement could only be related to Abba, an NPC from the novice village who managed the production and sale of equipment. What she controlled was exactly what he needed to start his new adventure. If this is a gift from her, I need to go see her, Lee thought. The Adventurers Association was well guarded, with guards watching the entrance. Inside, a group of novice adventurers was arguing with, demanding a welcome package. "You have plenty of resources. It wouldn't cost you anything to give us something, right?" one of them insisted. But, with a firm gaze, replied, "Nothing in this life is free. If you have no money, leave before I call the guards." The adventurers, frustrated with her response, left murmuring that although she was beautiful, she was also very strict. Shauna, visibly irritated, turned toward the door as another visitor entered. "Adventurer, didn't I already tell you I won't sell you anything if you don't have money?" Her expression completely changed when she saw who it was. She exclaimed with tear-filled eyes and, without hesitation, ran toward him, her cheeks flushed, and a smile lighting up the entire room. She threw herself into his arms as if she couldn't believe he was really there before her. To Lee, this was more than just a reunion. In the original game, Shauna was the only romanceable character in the novice village. Although he wasn't particularly strong, her constant support and bright smile motivated him to keep going during the most challenging moments. If it weren't for her, he would probably have given up on the game. Now, the warmth of her body and the emotion in her voice confirmed something he had never imagined. Was no longer just a series of cold data, but a person of flesh and blood. "It's been so long since you've come to see me," Shauna said. "You didn't encounter dangerous monsters on the way, did you?" Lee smiled calmly. "I'm fine, but for certain reasons, I've gone back to being a novice adventurer. I have no money and practically no equipment." Shauna looked at him with determination. "Don't worry. With my savings, I'll buy the best set for you." Without giving him a chance to protest, she handed him the best equipment, worth at least 10,000 copper coins. Probably half of Shauna's savings from 6 months. Lee was deeply moved by her gesture. Finally equipped and more confident, he prepared to hunt and begin anew. As he moved toward the exit, Shauna stopped him with a soft voice. "Are you leaving the village?" He gave her a calm look. "Don't worry, I'll be fine." He took out a piece of clothing she had given him earlier and asked curiously, "By the way, why did you give me this?" Blushed deeply, avoiding his gaze. With a timid voice, she responded, "Dear, could you accompany me tonight?" Lee patted Shauna's head with a comforting smile. "Wait for me at home. I'll be back soon with the equipment ready and enhanced skills." He headed toward the forest's outskirts, a place notorious for its increasing danger the deeper one ventured. The forest was divided into 3 zones: the outskirts, the dense forest, and the central zone. On the outskirts, the monsters were level 1, ideal for a starting point. Lee knew he couldn't waste time. The hidden and secret resources were limited, and someone might get to them before he did. While exploring, he found clear signs of recent combat. "Someone perished here recently," he murmured, noticing traces of several individuals. "This must be the work of the fire rooster," he thought, staying alert. Suddenly, intense heat signaled an incoming attack. A fireball was heading his way. Thanks to his agility, Lee dodged just in time. Turning around, he saw the culprit, the fiery hoster, a monster known for its aggressiveness and powerful attacks. "It's impressive to see it live," Lee thought, though it was also intimidating. The rooster wasted no time, launching another attack, but Lee evaded it again. Seizing the moment, he drew his sword and landed a precise strike, reducing the monster's life by 20 points. However, Lee was still adjusting to his body. Having been bedridden and unable to move freely since falling ill at age 12, he now felt a mix of wonder and excitement as he faced his first real combat with his strengthened body and enhanced attributes. The fire rooster, though wounded, did not give up. Lee taunted it slightly, and with determination, the rooster advanced, readying its special move, the flaming headbutt, which left no room for escape. Both charged at each other. Lee, however, knew the rooster had 15 attack points. His constitution provided him with 10 defense points, and with the equipment Shauna gave him, he reached a total of 20 points. The rooster's attacks couldn't penetrate his defense. Lee counterattacked with a precise slash, ending the fight in a single blow. The fire rooster fell, and several system windows appeared before him. "Status increase," he read with satisfaction, seeing his points rise. His first real combat in this world was a success. Meanwhile, in another part of the village, a group of novices faced a much tougher opponent, a swift wind hare. Though small, the creature's speed and agility were overwhelming. A young man was trying to convince his brother, Jan, to retreat. "It doesn't make sense. That thing is twice as fast as us. It'll kill us all." But Jan refused to listen. "If we retreat now, the entire army will be annihilated." Before anyone could react, the hare lunged at Jan. With a single leap, it bypassed his defense and struck him, sending him flying into a tree. The impact was brutal. Yan was the city's champion fighter and had come with 7 companions to face the swift wind hares. However, despite their efforts, they hadn't managed to injure even one. One hare prepared to execute its killing blow on the next target. Young, alarmed, warned his companion, "Shell Fanfan, watch out! The hare is coming for you." Fanfan tried to react, but the hare's speed was overwhelming. Just when all seemed lost, a sword cut through the air, striking the creature and finishing it with a single blow. Amid the group's stunned silence, Lee appeared with an imposing presence. "The hare's quick attack always comes from the right, just behind the target," he said while retrieving his sword. Before anyone could thank him, one of the group members angrily approached Lee with a confrontational attitude. "Why do you have such good equipment? And why didn't you share that information in the chat? Many people died because of your greed." Lee's expression darkened, and he responded with narrowed eyes. "Is that how you talk to your savior?" The man, far from calming down, continued his tirade. Yan, observing the situation, punched him, causing the man to shrink back. "You're ungrateful. If you don't like it, leave our group. We don't accept such miserable people." With the conflict resolved, the man stormed off angrily. Yan turned to Lee with an expression, "Regretfully, I apologize for his behavior. I am Ian, and this is Shelf Fanfan. We thank you for saving us." Shelf Fanfan introduced himself with a bow. "Thank you very much. Without you, I wouldn't be here." Ian, trying to establish a connection, added, "Nature is full of setbacks. If you don't mind, would you like to join our group?" Lee calmly shook his head. "It's not necessary. I'm used to being alone." Without further delay, he turned and headed toward the forest. Shen, a member of the group, approached Ian and X-Fan. "That guy is heading to a dangerous area where level 2 monsters live. According to rumors, 20 people entered that area, and only one came back alive." Ian crossed his arms, assessing the situation. "That guy isn't an ordinary person. Just looking at him, you can tell he has experience. Besides, he left us valuable information about the weaknesses of the hares. Now that we know how to deal with them, we can hunt more." The group decided to reorganize and take advantage of the information provided by Lee. On the other hand, our protagonist Lee was heading for the ridden dungeon of Iron-Tailed Black Snake, advancing easily by killing every monster he encountered. Fortunately, no one else had discovered the dungeon. Thanks to this series of battles, he managed to level up to level 2. Each time he leveled up, all his attributes increased by 10 points, and he received 5 free attribute points. He decided to allocate the last points to his attack stat, as he considered it crucial for his progress. This time, with his new attributes and the knowledge he had about the dungeon, he was sure he could face the boss monster at the bottom of the dungeon. As he advanced, Lee noticed a change in the atmosphere. A monster was approaching him at high speed. It turned out to be the nest master of the Black Iron-Tailed Snake, an elite monster. From the first encounter, Lee understood why the snake's stats exceeded those of other beasts of the same level. Its body was covered by an iron scale armor, practically impenetrable. "With an attack lower than 60 points, I won't be able to break its defense," Lee thought, quickly assessing the situation. But he wasn't reckless enough to engage in a war of attrition. He knew the snake's characteristics. It was a cunning creature with a single weak point, the head. When someone got within 3 meters of it, the snake activated its special ability, the venom spray. This poisonous attack was devastating, but it also revealed its greatest weakness. The reason this beast was classified as level 4 was its vulnerability after unleashing all its venom in 0.8 seconds. After the attack, the snake entered a state of extreme weakness. Lee took advantage of this information with calculated precision. After dodging the initial attacks, he waited for the exact moment the snake would release its venom spray. Taking advantage of the 0.8-second window, he advanced with a quick and precise movement, striking directly at its weak point on the head. The monster fell to the ground, and Lee had defeated the elite monster. Immediately, several system windows appeared before him, displaying rewards, valuable equipment, materials, and an increase in reputation for being the first to defeat an elite monster in the dungeon. After defeating the Black Iron Tail Snake, Lee not only received the system rewards, but also obtained an unexpected loot. The monster dropped several treasures, which was rare, considering low-level monsters had less than a 1% chance of dropping a chest. Among the rewards, he found a level iron bracelet called the Serpent Bracelet, which provided a significant increase to his defense stats. Lee knew it had been luck this time, but his true goal in entering the dungeon was he headed toward a specific section of the cave, a location that would go unnoticed by anyone who didn't know about the game. There, he found what he was looking for, a skill book titled Summary of Swordsmanship. This was a bronze-level skill that significantly increased the effectiveness of his attacks and his control in combat. Upon accepting the skill, all the knowledge from the book was transferred directly to his mind. Satisfied with the result of his venture, he decided to return to the city. The night was cold, and he didn't want to worry Shauna, who was waiting for him. Meanwhile, she was collecting herbs outside the village to prepare some recovery potions as a surprise for Lee, thinking of helping him after his constant adventures. While she worked, she felt a strange presence. "Who's there?" she asked with a firm voice, though internally she was trembling with nervousness. The men she had encountered earlier at the adventurer's tent appeared from the shadows. They were furious with how he had treated them and sought revenge. "It seems that Miss Shauna is alone," one said with a malicious smile. "How about handing over all the money you have, and while you're at it, giving us a bit of fun?" Shauna tried to stay calm and warned them. "Do you know what you're doing? Don't you fear the guard's punishment?" The men laughed dismissively. "As long as there are no witnesses, no one will know anything," one of them replied, while the others prepared to leap at her. Shauna trembled but didn't back down. "Will you still have this attitude when we strike back?" She mocked the leader. Just as they were about to attack, Lee appeared suddenly. "Is everything all right, Shauna?" he asked calmly, while she sighed with relief upon seeing him. Lee stepped between the men and Shauna. "Let me handle this," he said with a confident smile. One of the men, surprised to see him, spoke to his leader. "He's the guy with the good equipment." The leader turned to Lee with an arrogant expression. "Hand over your equipment and the girl, and maybe we'll let you live." Lee looked at him calmly. "What if I refuse?" he asked. The man laughed dismissively. "Then don't complain if we don't let you live." Before he could finish speaking, Lee made a single quick movement, completely disarming the man. Lee's swordsmanship skill had improved significantly, giving him greater control over his blade. As the remaining group members advanced toward him with the intent to kill, Lee showed no mercy. Each movement was precise and devastating, leaving the attackers unable to react. The men, seeing the damage Lee could cause, began to retreat, filled with terror. Some fell to their knees, begging for mercy and promising to change. Lee gave a slight smile. "At least you have a sincere attitude," he commented sarcastically, but that won't help you. He concluded the confrontation swiftly, ensuring none of them would be a threat again. Shauna ran to him with a worried face. "Are you hurt?" she asked anxiously. Lee shook his head. "I'm fine, but what about you? Why were you outside the city so late?" She looked down, embarrassed. "I wanted to collect herbs to make potions for you. I didn't expect something like this to happen." Lee sighed, his tone serious. "From now on, there will be no completely safe place in this world. The most dangerous thing isn't beasts, but the human heart." Then, looking at her with determination, he added, "Let me stay with you for a while. If I'm by your side, I can protect you all the time." Shauna looked at him in surprise, and then a smile lit up her face. "From now on, my house is also your house." Back in the village that night, Lee sat nervously on the bed in the small cabin, the events of the day still on his mind, but now he felt a strange warmth being so close to Shauna. Meanwhile, Shauna was taking a bath. He couldn't help but smile. His heart raced when he thought that he had decided to stay with her. She had always always dreamed of being by his side, but never imagined that this dream would become a reality so quickly. She really cared for him. When she came out of the bathroom wrapped in a light towel, Shauna looked at him tenderly. "It's late," she said nervously. "We should rest." Lee looked at her, and for a moment their gazes met. Though he was a bit nervous at first, he remembered that he was no longer the same weak man as before. Since his reincarnation, he had decided to be strong enough to protect those he loved. Determined, Lee approached Shauna. "No matter how the world changes, I will always be by your side." They sealed their words with a kiss full of love. That night, their bond grew stronger, and my boy became a man. The next morning, Shauna woke up with a smile and thanked Lee for the wonderful night they had shared. While she slept deeply, the system interrupted his thoughts with an important message. 5 players from the village had reached level 2, unlocking the level ranking and chat of the first region. This was not good at all. At this rate, most of them wouldn't reach level 10 in 15 days, and if things didn't change, everyone would die. Lee checked the ranking and saw he was in first place. As a reward, he received 50 copper coins and a fragment to open a silver chest. However, he needed to collect 2 more pieces to unlock the chest. This mechanism didn't exist in the version of the game he remembered, meaning something had changed drastically in this reality. Additionally, he noticed another interesting detail. The first player to reach level 10 would receive a gold chest, coins, and a symbol to open another gold chest. An extremely rare treasure, even in the advanced stages of the game. If he managed to get it, he would have a significant advantage in this competition. However, when looking at the statistics of the first region room, he saw the real challenge. 10,000 villages and 10 million players competing for a single prize. Lee knew he couldn't waste time. While getting dressed, Shauna asked him, worried, "Are you going out again?" He gave her some potions and told her he had prepared them especially for him, her dark circles revealing she had worked after their romantic encounter. Touched by this, he caressed her face and gave her a gentle kiss. "Don't worry about me. I'll be back soon. And it's better to see you in that maid uniform you promised me." Shauna blushed but smiled softly. "Then I'll wait for you on the outskirts of the forest." Newbies, 2 figures were discussing while observing everything from the top of a mountain. Layla and her sister Zing were talking about Lee, the mysterious player leading the rank. "How is it possible that he's already level 3? Asked Layla, frustrated. "We killed several monsters and are still level 2. Both sisters felt a mix of admiration and competitiveness toward him. Meanwhile, he moved with determination toward his next objective in the Icefang forest. Zikim remained calm as she observed the pack of 7 level 2 Icefang wolves from a distance. She watched carefully and said to her sisters, "We don't need to worry. Let's wait patiently until one of them gets isolated." After a few minutes, Layla pointed out, "I don't see a lone wolf, but I do see a handsome boy, and he's completely alone." Zeke frowned, concerned. What is someone doing in a level 2 monster zone without support? They all watched as the boy approached the pack without hesitation. He was already in front of the wolves, and without showing any fear, Zikim made a hasty decision. "We need to help him before it's too late!" Without hesitation, she ran toward him while shouting as loudly as she could, "Careful! Get out of there!" However, what she witnessed left her speechless. Lee eliminated all the wolves with 1 strike each, without any apparent effort. The speed and precision of his movements were superhuman. Zikim and her companions, now a few meters away from him, watched in shock. Lee turned to them with a calm expression and asked, "Came to save me?" He sighed and said, "With the skills you have, jumping in to rescue would only put your lives at risk. You should be more concerned about yourselves." Zikim, still recovering from the shock, responded, "We are officials. If a citizen is in danger, we do everything we can to help. You're the leader of the ranking, right? Your name appeared in the District 1 room. Why don't you join us?" Lee looked at her seriously. "If I joined you, I'd just slow you down." His answer was direct and somewhat harsh. But before anyone could respond, he took a book from his inventory and handed it to her. "However, I'll give you a chance. If you reach level 5 in 2 days, I'll look for you." Zikim looked at the book in amazement. It was a guide to all the monsters in the outskirts of the newbie forest. "How did you get this?" she asked incredulously, still impressed by the gesture. Why give us something so valuable? Lee smiled faintly. I'm not doing this for free. You're officials. So use it to spread the information as fast as possible. You have the means to get this, don't you? Without waiting for a response, Lee turned and disappeared into the trees. As Lee walked away from the group, he thought to himself, it's not that I'm a saint, but as a human, I can't ignore the situation. If everyone in the village gets stronger, we'll have a better chance of facing the final dungeon. With that resolve, he continued on his way. He observed as he disappeared among the trees. His friend Layla, noticing his expression, asked with a mischievous smile, "Did you fall in love with him?" Zikin, a little nervous and with flushed cheeks, replied, "Of course not. I just think that with his help, we could all finally be safe." He unlocked the title Forest Slayer as he ventured deeper into the area, soon finding an unusual tree, the Cursed Blood Tree. He knew that eliminating monsters one by one would no longer guarantee an advantage in the competition. Other players would use the resources of their villages to advance faster. If he wanted to maintain the lead, he'd have to take risks. He placed his hand on the tree, and a text appeared on his interface. "Do you wish to enter the hidden dungeon, Elven Domain? Once inside, you cannot leave until it's completed." Without hesitation, he accepted. A portal opened in front of him. As he walked deeper, he murmured to himself, "It's been a while since I greeted an old friend." The portal closed behind him, isolating him completely from the outside world until he passed through the dungeon. Elsewhere, in a meeting, the leader of Village 9 was analyzing the situation and asked, "Is it true that Liming Ju is as strong as they say? I heard he can take down monsters with a single blow." One of his subordinates started laughing. "Take down monsters with a single blow? I think X must have seen something wrong when he was running away." Another member intervened. "The information Chie gave us is valuable. According to Chie, the progress of their village is slow. They only have 5 people at level 2, just 1/10 of what we've achieved." The leader thought about it and finally said, "If there are no doubts, it's time to act." He took out an ancient artifact and raised it before everyone. "As we knew it, it's over. From now on, everything belongs to us in Village 0. Everything seemed calm. The villagers were eating and chatting leisurely, but the conversation revolved around one topic. "Did you hear about that boy?" "Who?" "The one who got the rank S. They say he eliminated an entire pack of wolves without breaking a sweat." Zeke handed Yan the monster guide that had been given to him. As Yan examined the contents, he confidently said, "If this guide was written by Lee, there's no doubt it's completely reliable. I'll make sure to distribute it as quickly as possible." At that moment, everyone received a message from the system. Village 9 had issued a challenge against them. The message included the engagement rules. Both villages had to defeat the wild beasts. Each experience point gained would be equivalent to 1 point in the competition. The winning village would receive a 50% increase in skill points for all its members and a 100% improvement in experience gains in the beginner forest. The losing village would suffer a reduction in skill points and accumulated experience. The confrontation would start immediately. Yan frowned, visibly irritated. "This is ridiculous. We're at a critical moment for humanity, and instead of uniting, we attack each other." Zikin sighed. "The leader of the group that challenged us is Wang from the mercenary clan W. Wolf. They say they ruthlessly kill anyone from outside the country." He clenched his fists. "These shameless mercenaries, if we were alone, we'd have no chance against them. But luckily, we have Lee on our side." At that moment, X interrupted with a worried expression. "Wait, look at the leaderboard!" Everyone ran to check, only to discover that Lee's name had disappeared. Meanwhile, Lee had entered the Elven Secret Realm. This place, once home to a prosperous Elven community, was now corrupted and controlled by a goblin legion. The connection to the outside world had been severed. The goblins here were far more numerous and stronger than the beasts in the beginner forest. Normally, players only dared to enter this place after reaching level 7. However, Lee was confident in his prior knowledge as he moved between the trees. A strange noise caught his attention. Meanwhile, Lee had entered the secret realm of the elves. This place, once home to a prosperous elven community, was now corrupted and under the control of the Goblin Legion. The connection to the outside world had been severed. The goblins in this place were far more numerous and stronger than the beasts in the Novice Forest. Normally, players would only venture into this place after reaching level 7. However, Lee was confident in his prior knowledge. As he moved among the trees, a strange noise caught his attention. He quickly turned, alert. What he saw left him intrigued. A young woman was tied up. Lee frowned as he looked at the captive elf. He had no memory of this event in the game, which led him to wonder if he had triggered an unknown special mission. With effort, the elf managed to remove her gag and shouted, "Watch out! From above!" A goblin lunged in a surprise attack against Lee. He reacted in time, blocking the blow with his sword. The goblin, realizing it couldn't defeat him in a direct confrontation, fled towards a nearby tree, activating a series of traps. Lee dodged each attack with impeccable precision. From her position, the elf watched in amazement. How can he dodge like that? She thought. It's as if he knows where all the traps will fall. Could this adventurer have come to rescue me? When Lee reached her, he spoke firmly. "Excuse me, I need to see your back." The young woman looked at him, perplexed and somewhat embarrassed. "What? Why?" "Sorry. I need to confirm if you have the mark of elven purity to ensure you haven't been corrupted by the goblins and betrayed the elves," he explained. Although blushing, the elf agreed. "All right, but make it quick." After confirming that the mark was intact, Lee hoisted her onto his shoulder and began running. "Sorry, but there's no time to lose. We need to move before they catch up," he said, effortlessly dodging obstacles. The elf, recovering from her surprise, assured him, "They didn't hurt me. I would rather die than suffer their cruelty. They couldn't because my identity is special." Lee frowned. "Special? Who exactly are you?" As they ran, an idea crossed his mind. What if this young woman was the missing sister of the elven princess in the game? He remembered that in his previous life, after completing this level, a princess appeared searching for her lost sister. He had never managed to find her and assumed it was a game bug. Now, perhaps, he had the chance to change that fate. Suddenly, the elf warned, "They cast a tracking spell on me. If I stay with you, I'll put you in danger too. Run now!" Lee pressed on with determination. "Why should I run? A good opportunity is rare. This is my chance. If they come after me, I'll choose a good place to bury them." As the goblins advanced from above, the elf asked, "Lee, is this the place you chose to bury them?" She looked at him incredulously. "We're surrounded by the goblin army, and behind the mountain, there are only cliffs." Lee smiled calmly and asked, "Why the rush? Haven't you noticed something strange while walking around here?" The elf frowned, trying to recall. "Now that you mention it, there are a lot of chains everywhere. I don't remember the elves building anything like that." Lee nodded with a cunning smile. "Those chains are not the work of the elves. They don't know how to create such malicious traps. These chains are creations of the Goblin Legion. They serve as seams holding these mountains together. They were designed to defeat the elves at the time." The elf looked at him in awe. "It's amazing that you discovered something so hidden," Lee calmly thought. "After falling into this place countless times in my past life, I learned all its secrets. This place is practically an open book to me, and these goblins never imagined they would be defeated by their own traps." Without further delay, Lee broke one of the main chains. The metallic sound echoed throughout the mountain, and immediately the ground began to collapse. Large stone blocks fell, burying dozens of goblins who screamed in despair. System messages flooded his vision. Experience increased. Level 8 achieved. The elf watched the scene with her mouth agape. "This is incredible!" she exclaimed. "Finally, I have the chance to avenge my people." She approached Lee, her expression full of admiration, and said, "Thank you. I've never seen a novice adventurer with your level of skill. What you did for my people is invaluable." Holding Lee's hand, she said seriously, "I have a favor to ask of you. Could you take care of the remaining goblins?" Lee blushed a little with the closeness, but felt confident. "Sure, but you'll need to wait for me a moment." Without giving her time to respond, Lee started descending the mountain with surprising speed. The elf tried to stop him. "Wait! You left before I could give you my blessing," she shouted. But it was too late. Lee had already disappeared into the distance. The elf, with a mix of frustration and admiration, murmured to herself, "He is no longer just a simple adventurer. He is my true benefactor. I only hope he returns safely." After reaching level 8, all his attributes increased threefold. His strength, agility, and endurance now far exceeded many human limits. This newfound power allowed him to face the remaining goblins with brutal efficiency, eliminating them and converting them into attribute points. Meanwhile, in the Forest of Novices, the members of Village Zero fought, following Lee's strategies. Thanks to his planning, the gap between them and the mercenaries from the Savage Wolf group had diminished considerably. Ian believed Lee's sacrifice was protecting them, and everyone felt the responsibility of not disappointing him. He ordered a 10-minute break. "Recover your strength. We'll return to combat shortly." Zal Fan Fan approached Zekin, who seemed unusually restless. "You should sit down and rest a bit," he said with concern. Zekin shook his head, his gaze fixed on the distance. "I'm going to the level 1 monster area. I need to earn more points," he replied. Layla, noticing the worry on Zal Fan Fan's face, said to him, "Since Lee died, she hasn't been the same." Zal Fan Fan raised an eyebrow. "Lee?" "Yes," Layla replied. "It's the first time I've seen Zekin face something like this after meeting a man. It was obvious she had feelings for him. It's a shame their love never blossomed. Now she just hunts incessantly to numb her emotions." On the other hand, Ying was immersed in her own thoughts. She was upset with Lee. "He didn't keep his promise," she murmured, clenching her fists. She wondered why she felt so bad if she barely knew him. But deep down, she knew the answer. Lee was someone different, someone who seemed destined to face unknown dangers. If I could accompany him, things would be different, she wondered. Suddenly, she saw Lee's name appear in the rankings. Her heart raced. "What is happening?" she whispered, incredulous. In the Elven Kingdom, Lee finished the fight against the goblins. It was then that something strange happened. A crack appeared in the sky, as if space itself was shattering. The elf accompanying him, still recovering from the recent events, was alarmed. "What is happening?" she asked, her voice laden with urgency. Lee cautiously looked at the crack and replied, "Someone is entering from the main world." The elf, after observing the crack in the sky, spoke with hope. "It's probably my sister. By the way, my name is Freylin. I am the second princess of the elven royalty. My sister Freya is the most powerful light elf of our clan, second only to our mother, the queen. The goblins consider her their greatest threat and wanted to use me as leverage to capture her. But thanks to you, their plans were thwarted. Ask for any reward. I will be indebted to you." Lee, however, was not swayed by her words of gratitude. "I don't think things are that simple," he replied seriously. "If your sister is so strong, why did the goblins send only common soldiers to capture you? They aren't fools. They must have something else planned." Freylin nodded, concerned. "Maybe you're right. My sister might be in danger right now." At that moment, in the Elven Palace, Freya examined the devastated surroundings. There was an unsettling silence that only increased her anxiety. Then, without wasting time, she sent her bird to search for Freylin. But as soon as it took flight, it was struck down. Before she could react, a tall goblin wielding a spear emerged from the shadows and said with a sarcastic smile, "Don't worry. I'll reunite you with your sister after you die." Freya felt her energy beginning to drain away. "What is happening?" she murmured weakly, unable to maintain her upright posture. The goblin laughed as he slowly advanced towards her. "We've studied the elves for centuries. We finally found an effective curse against you. Activating it cost us a colossal amount of spiritual crystals, but it was worth it. With you out of the way, the sanctuary barrier will fall, and with it, your clan will be at our mercy." Suddenly, a radiant sword cut across the battlefield, forcing the goblin to release Freya. The protagonist throws his blade at the monster, letting it go. With this opportunity, he jumps and catches the elf in time. The monster, furious with his metal club, tries to attack the protagonist from behind. Before being struck, another elf appears behind the protagonist and activates her elf barrier ability. The monster hits the barrier. Seeing that one strike won't suffice, the monster starts to strike the barrier repeatedly. She, already feeling the effects of the monster's blows, comments that her barrier won't hold for long. The protagonist, seeing the situation getting complicated, comments that a monster of this black iron level has attributes 1.2 times higher than regular monsters of the same level, and its health is 20 times greater. This goblin is called Totorus Goblin, level 18. Concerned, she screams, asking what to do now. The protagonist gives a sarcastic chuckle and comments that he never said he couldn't face it. Now he has the power of affection on his side. This girl in his arms at this moment is his greatest fortress. Happy, the barrier elf expresses joy that her sister has awakened and comments that the adventurer saved her from the goblin. She blushes at the protagonist's heroism, but she soon starts feeling her heart racing just from looking at him. She begins to feel something strange. She even feels safe by his side. Gathering courage and addressing him as an adventurer, she thanks him for saving her and her sister and asks if they have met before. The protagonist, smiling, thinks it seems she doesn't remember. It makes sense. Their story with Freya occurred after the dungeon in the second timeline. In this current timeline, this is their first meeting. In the previous game, Freya couldn't find her sister in the dungeon, so she renounced everything related to the elf race and focused on a solitary journey in search of her sister, becoming the famous elf explorer of the infinite continent. She was one of the rarest NPCs to encounter in the open world. It took me months to traverse the entire map, causing countless random encounters. Only then, through various absurd quests, was I able to maximize my affinity level with her. The protagonist addresses Freya and comments, "Although this is our first meeting, I've heard a lot about your glorious deeds. The situation is critical. I've heard you have a divine bow that is very effective against goblin kind. Could you lend it to me?" Reluctantly, she lends him her bow, a level 40 item called Glory of the Moon. She asks if the protagonist has the ability to use the bow with his level. Her sister, still in the barrier and surprised by his request, comments that the bow is level 40 to use. You could only wield it if you were Freya's contractor. The protagonist holds Freya by the shoulders and comments that she is under a curse that has taken away her mobility. "With our current strength, we cannot defeat the enemy. The best option now is for you, the princess, to form an elf contract with me." Her sister, embarrassed, shouts, "No!" The elf contract requires enough trust and affinity to establish the bond. They only know each other on an emotional basis, and if the contract fails, she would lose the mark of purity. She pleads with her sister not to accept. However, blushing, she comments that she is willing to accept. Her sister is completely astonished that she agreed so easily. Soon, the two kiss to initiate the contract. As the kiss grows hotter between them, a green light begins to emanate from them. Her sister, surprised by the light emitting from them, almost cries, indignant. She comments that she can't believe her sister made a contract with an adventurer. She questions whether it's love at first sight and starts crying in frustration. However, this weakness gave the monster the opening it wanted. With the weakened barrier, the monster breaks through it. Smiling, the monster comments for her to stop resisting uselessly, as her only destiny is death. However, the protagonist cuts the monster while mocking its statement. After the contract is sealed, the protagonist acquires the passive ability of the Light Elf and the Blessing of the Light Elves, a legendary level skill that grants the effect of obtaining the racial ability of a Light Elf. When receiving a physical attack, there is a 20% chance of damage immunity. The goblin, surprised, recognizes the glory of Luna Bow, but soon starts laughing, mocking the bow, since the protagonist wouldn't have a high enough level to use it. Then, he challenges the protagonist to shoot with it. The protagonist, surrounded by a greenish aura, comments that if the goblin is eager to die, he will fulfill his wish. The goblin, surprised, wonders why he feels the aura of the elves emanating from the protagonist. His body begins trembling. feeling as if death is approaching. Holding the bow and drawing it, the protagonist asks where all the goblin's confidence has gone. The bow starts gathering energy, but the goblin, who had exuded confidence, quickly flees, screaming and asking who the protagonist is and how he is able to gather so much energy in the Luna bow. Opening the door and realizing there are no more guards, the protagonist, with the bow already brimming with energy, fires at the goblin. The powerful energy pierces a clean hole through the goblin's body. The system announces that he has defeated the Black Iron Grade boss, earning 27,500 experience points and leveling up to level 10. The dropped equipment is the Goblin's Spear Silver Grade. The protagonist picks up the spear and remarks on his luck that it is of Silver Grade. Seeing the spear's stats, he realizes it will probably double his damage immediately. From the goblin emerges a floating red stone, leaving him curious. They ask what it is. The protagonist takes it, and the system reveals it to be a fragment of Dark Origin, a fragment containing the power of Dark Origin with part of the magic to manipulate time and space. The protagonist comments that they likely used this stone to seal this space. Freya remarks that as far as she knows, goblins shouldn't have something like this. There must be another force aiding them from the shadows. She says she needs to inform the Emperor, her father, immediately. The sky begins to crack. The protagonist comments that after the goblin with the fragment was killed, this space is returning to the main world, and they will also return to where they were. It's time to say goodbye. They hesitate, but Freya steps forward and thanks him for saving them. She says such a great debt won't be easy to repay, but time is running out. She says, "These are the best pieces of equipment I have. Feel free to choose." She shows him her equipment. The protagonist returns her bow and comments that her items are too high level for him right now and asks her to repay him later. Feeling slightly cheerful, they ask if this means they'll meet again. The protagonist, already dematerializing, assures her not to worry since the contract he made with her is like an eternal promise. Since he took the initiative, he vows to protect her when the time comes. Freya's sister, upon hearing these words, can't resist and runs to kiss him. She kisses him. The system announces that he has acquired the permanent blessing of the magical spirits after forming another contract with her sister, Freelin, also acquiring the same things as with Freya, who is left speechless upon witnessing the scene. Freelin, embarrassed, remarks that she has nothing to give him, so this is her way of thanking him, adding that she will keep this feeling in her heart and won't compete with her sister. She bids farewell, saying she will wait for him in the sacred lands. Blushing, the protagonist exits the tree portal. The system notifies him of 5 unread messages. The first one is a system alert. Player Wang Batian from Novice Village number 9 used a challenge order item, forcing a confrontation with Novice Village number 0. Combat rules. After killing beasts, each experience point earned will be equivalent to 1 point. The first village to accumulate 5,000 points will be the winner. Members of the losing village will lose 50% of their base attributes. We see the points of both villages. Some background characters are fighting against a level 6 tornado vulture. Up until now, the vulture is winning against them. Some are nearly dead, while others are already dead. Struggling to continue the fight against the level 6 vulture, the red-haired character comments that the gap between the points of Novice Village number 9 keeps increasing. Seeing no other choice, they decide to take the risk. But, except for Mu Ziking, everyone is gravely injured. The white-haired character, fainting in her arms, recalls that if their points are reduced by half, it will be impossible to escape. Frustrated, hitting a tree, she remarks that if Ye Tianming were there, things would be different. He gets up and shouts for the woman to escape while he distracts the vulture. She thinks she still has her conviction that keeps her standing. She believes that if the protagonist were there, however, she still believes he is alive. The vulture launches a powerful wind magic against her. She quickly realizes she can no longer escape the attack. But in the last second, someone appears and saves them from the vulture's attack. They are surprised that the protagonist is alive. The vulture, trembling just at the sight of the protagonist, flees far away. However, with his spear, the protagonist comments that it's merely a low-level monster with a good ability to sense danger. Then his spear emanates lightning energy, and in an instant, the protagonist throws it at the fleeing vulture, hitting it and causing 1,166 critical damage. The system announces the death of the level 6 vulture, granting 30 points to Village 0, bringing its score to 4,175. Everyone present is stunned by the 1,166 damage the protagonist dealt to the vulture. The system announces the protagonist as the first-place scorer for Village 0 and reveals his level to everyone, leaving them shocked that he has already reached level 10. The vulture falls from the sky, and the protagonist retrieves his spear from it. Mu Ziking, feeling slightly disappointed with her performance, approaches him and says she's useless, that even with good strategies, she couldn't win after all his expectations of her. She adds that, because he is the strongest, the attribute reduction will affect him greatly, and declares that from now on, she will stand by his side, ready to die protecting him. The protagonist tells her not to say such nonsense. He assures her that everything they've done so far is more than enough, and besides, the final results haven't been announced yet. Surprised, the bystanders comment that they're still over 700 points ahead of the other village. Can they really turn things around? The protagonist remarks, asking if they haven't noticed that he is level 10. The system then asks if he wants to integrate the points obtained in the secret realm of the elves into this. Meanwhile, Village 9, fighting together to handle great beasts and gain a good advantage over Village 0, is already confident of victory. However, their smiles fade as the system announces that Village 0 has accumulated 35,418 points, granting them the victory. They are congratulated while Village 9 is penalized, reducing their status attributes. Everyone in Village 9 is left bewildered, unable to understand why they lost, even questioning the system for a potential error. The system declares the end of the forced duel and publicly reveals the individual rankings, with the protagonist in first place with 31,273 individual points. The top 100 players who contributed the most points from the winning team will receive additional rewards. The players from Village 9 begin cursing the protagonist, completely forgetting about the beast they were hunting since the results had already been announced. However, the beast remains and attacks them. Weakened by the debuff on their stats, they are easily defeated, leaving them completely in disbelief. The injured bystanders are surprised to see their lives recovering. It's one of the winner's rewards. They also comment that their stats increased by 50%. The white-haired guy, who was on the brink of death, asks how he is still alive after all the damage he suffered. The red-haired guy says the protagonist saved them all. The bystanders then begin to thank the protagonist for saving everyone, with some even pledging eternal loyalty to him. The protagonist replies that so much gratitude isn't necessary and turns to Mu Ziking. He says, "I already told you that when you reached level 5, I would seek you out. I didn't expect you and Yang Tao to meet the requirements so quickly. You really did well." He then invites them to go finish the beginner's dungeon. As night falls, in the protagonist's dormitory, a beautiful blonde dressed as a maid is cleaning the room in a lovely outfit, leaving the protagonist exasperated by the sight. He ends up staring, captivated. She beams with joy that he's already back and celebrates how quickly he reached level 10. The protagonist gets full of himself as he says that she suspects her man. She brings him the adventurer's badge and congratulates him on being a black-level adventurer. The protagonist is pleased with his adventurer's badge. With this badge, he can accept black-level missions. The protagonist reminds Shasha that to advance to the Black Iron level, he needs to pass an exam. Being a guild official, she must be even stricter with friends and family. Cheating is not right. She blushes, embarrassed, and pulls him close, inviting him to bed to take the test right away. Confident, the protagonist comments that she should prepare to experience the power of a level 10 adventurer. He throws himself on her, and before the second round begins, she's already approving him for the exam. Soon she gives up, saying she can't take it anymore. The protagonist approaches her and asks if she will leave the village with him tomorrow. Saddened, she says her dream is to accompany him, but if she loses her job, she won't be able to provide money for him anymore. The protagonist reassures her, saying not to worry about making money, as it's easy for him. He tells her that even if she loses her job, she has now achieved financial freedom, and, from now on, he will take care of her for the rest of her life. Overjoyed, she hugs him, saying she will be his exclusive servant forever. After their fun, dawn arrives. The protagonist meets up with the group that participated in the mission. The supporting characters do not hold back on their praises, and the protagonist is highly praised by everyone. Mu Ziking comments that she followed the protagonist's instructions and gathered all players of level 2 or higher. The red-haired one approaches one of the supporting characters, yelling at him and questioning why he's there. The supporting character, frightened, kneels and says he regrets it and should not have offended Gran Ye, begging for another chance. Furious, the red-haired one has no intention of giving him another chance, but the protagonist tells him to calm down. The supporting character kneels, cursing the protagonist in his thoughts and blaming him for everything that happened to him, vowing to take revenge in the dungeon if he gets a chance. The protagonist approaches him and says that after attempting to ambush him multiple times, he didn't expect him to come to him. He then mentions his name, Ziwen of the Wild Wolves, and comments on his surprise that he would come forward. The protagonist's friends are shocked to learn that he is part of the mercenary group Wild Wolves. Trembling, unsure of how the protagonist knows, the supporting character begins to deny it, even claiming they have no proof. On the ground, he says that even though he offended Ye Tianming, they have no right to abuse their power and accuses them of slander. The red-haired one comments that if the protagonist says so, he doesn't need proof. Mu Ziking says one of the reasons the mercenaries didn't attack was because he is a traitor. The protagonist draws his sword and states that the outcome is clear. Desperate, the supporting character protests that they can't kill him, revealing he is indeed part of the Wild Wolves mercenaries and mentioning that his leader is alive. He warns that if they kill him, his leader will never forgive them. However, the protagonist, showing no mercy, comments that corpses don't talk and separates the head from the body with a single slash of his blade, leaving all the supporting characters shocked at his lack of empathy for enemies. The red-haired one also agrees with the protagonist's decision. The protagonist tells them to move on, as there are more important matters. They head to a camp in the woods. Upon reaching the entrance, the protagonist states he is there on behalf of the Adventurers Guild to investigate and shows them his black iron badge. Crying, a supporting character clings to the protagonist, expressing gratitude for his presence and for finally coming to rescue them. Another guard comments on the thick fog in the area, mentioning that several caravans have disappeared and that strange sounds are heard each night from within the forest. He says it's increasingly unsafe to stay, as only the two of them are the last surviving guards. The system notifies them that they have entered the dungeon, the Path of Souls. Due to the number of participants being 50, the dungeon's level has increased to Infernal. Inside, the supporting characters comment on how cold it is. The protagonist immediately gives the first order for them to hide and not appear until he gives further instructions. Everyone hides, and only the protagonist is there, and with that, some people approach. An old man with a horned helmet riding a horse comes closer, followed by a few others. Soon, the old man, surprised, comments that finally, someone has appeared and says, "Adventurer, we are the guardians of a caravan, and for some reason, we can't find the city's entrance. We've been wandering around here for months. We can't take it anymore." Then he asks if the protagonist knows the way out of there. The protagonist, with a friendly expression, says, "Of course I'll show you." The old man dismounts his horse and thanks him. As he approaches the protagonist, he says that the protagonist is a good adventurer. However, as he gets closer, the protagonist suddenly draws his spear and pierces the old man's chest, killing him. With the old man on the ground, the protagonist comments, "The path I wanted to show you is the one that leads to eternal rest." His companions, who were hidden, start saying that he has returned to killing people in public. Some even mention that after killing that guy, his experience increased, and that killing people shouldn't grant experience points. Another companion suggests they calm down and look at the old man's corpse, as something seems strange. Soon, the old man's body starts emitting a strange energy. The others who were following the old man reveal their true undead faces and question how the protagonist knew his identity. Their commander, who is also mounted on his horse and at level 10, declares that a mere novice adventurer cannot stand against his army of undead. He then begins summoning more skeletons from the ground with his magic. The protagonist's companions are shocked by the sheer number of high-level monsters. Some suggest helping him since he seems to be in danger. However, the red-haired companion tells them to stay calm until the protagonist gives the order, warning that acting rashly could hinder him. They wonder how the undead can control such a large army of monsters. Despite his companion's concerns, the protagonist exudes confidence, commenting that while their level is higher, in his past life these monsters were weaker and fewer in number. "The only thing you're good for is granting experience," he remarks. The protagonist quickly begins cutting down the undead, demonstrating his great skill and agility with his spear, thrilling his companions as they witness him handling the high-level monsters alone. As he continues defeating the monsters and gaining experience, the system announces that he has reached the maximum experience level. Any remaining experience will be temporarily stored, and he must change classes soon to continue leveling up. After defeating the undead army, the skeleton commander exclaims in disbelief, "How is it possible for him to defeat my glorious army alone?" Still confident, the skeleton warns the protagonist not to get carried away, as he still has himself to face. However, as the undead commander prepares to fight, his horse rebels against him, throwing him to the ground. The monster is stunned, unable to understand how his horse dared to betray him. The horse then starts trampling him, killing him in the process. Surprised, the protagonist reflects, "Beastly undead, unlike humans, retain some of the obsessions from their life. It seems this horse harbored a deep hatred for the one who killed it and managed to break free from the evil that controlled it." The protagonist approaches the undead horse, now at level 10, and easily gains its trust, taming it in the process. He speaks to the horse, asking, "Do you want me to take you to avenge the manipulator behind all this?" The horse seems to agree, and the protagonist mounts his new steed, riding off toward the road. His companions appear after everything has ended. The red-haired one comments that these monsters are beyond what they could handle, and emphasizes the need for them to improve. Shortly after, the system notifies the protagonist of a private message, requesting a favor that remains confidential. The protagonist then reaches the teleportation area, surrounded by numerous corpses. Entering the hall, a sinister voice echoes, "Someone passed my trial?" faster than I expected. The creature, identifying itself as Roland Harland, reveals its level 22 necromancer class. Roland introduces himself to the protagonist, offering him the chance to become one of the great necromancers. The system then prompts the protagonist with the option to switch to the necromancer class. With a hint of disgust, the protagonist responds, "You killed so many innocents and turned them into puppets for your so-called trial." The old necromancer, amused by the deaths of innocents, laughs and claims that being part of his power is an honor for them. "Besides, this undead army proves how great it is to be a necromancer," he boasts. The protagonist mocks his claims of grandeur, remarking, "Everyone knows the Church of Light has been hunting the necromancer clan to extinction, forcing the survivors to hide and resort to cowardly and cruel methods to recruit new members. Your class and your kind are nothing more than mere rats." Furious at the insults, Roland concentrates his magic on his staff, exclaiming, "How dare you defile the name of necromancers?" Realizing they are at odds, Roland decides to eliminate the protagonist, even if it means wasting his talent. He summons level 18 undead warriors to attack the protagonist, who remains calm in the face of the threat. When he was about to be struck by one of the warriors' axes, he protects himself but is thrown backward. While in the air, due to the axe attack, the necromancer summons some hands that grab the protagonist, holding him while mocking his lack of skill. The necromancer states he will turn the protagonist into a good undead soldier for his army. In the air, being held by the hands, the necromancer summons a coffin to begin the protagonist's ritual. However, until then, the protagonist remains calm.